right, hello everyone. Welcome and thanks so much for joining us this afternoon for our webinar, Going Virtual, Using iClicker to Keep Students Engaged. My name is Lindsay Thomas and I'm the Training and Documentation Manager for iClicker. Before we start the presentation, just a couple of quick announcements. First, we've muted everyone to keep out background noise, but we do want to hear from you. If you'd like to ask us a question or give any feedback, feel free to type it into the chat or questions box on the right side of your screen. I'll be monitoring the questions as they come in, but we'll be saving questions for a Q&A section at the end of the webinar. We do have a much larger audience than usual, so if I don't get to your question in the webinar, we'll follow up with you by email. I also wanted to let you know that we are recording this webinar and we'll email you a link early next week. So that's it for housekeeping. I'm very excited to announce today's presenter, Natalie Dougall, who is a former English professor with 10 years of experience teaching online. Natalie is now a training specialist and faculty advocate here at iClicker. So over to you, Natalie.
Okay, thank you so much, Lindsay. So can everybody hear me well? Everything's good here? You always want to check in when you're presenting online just to make sure your audio is good. So yes, before I came to Macmillan, I taught in community colleges and I taught online for over 10 years. And I taught online so long ago that we used to have to teach through Outlook in a message board, and it was just this insane handling of documents. There were no LMSs like there are now. But it's still a big change from being in the classroom and being able to kind of feed off the energy of your students to teaching online. And I really hope that today I'm able to talk about ways that we can bring that energy into your virtual classroom. So the very first thing that we want to make sure that everyone knows is here at iClicker, we are really focused on helping you as we as a nation and as educators deal with COVID-19. And I just want to say, I know we are all focused on the essentials of life right now, and you being here at this webinar shows how essential education and educators are right now. So some of you are established iClicker users. Some of you are going, I need to make my classroom interactive when it's online. What is this iClicker thing? So iClicker works with all of your existing lesson plans, presentation tools, and all video conferencing programs. So right now, the tools that I'm using to present to you right now, we're using GoToWebinar. And in our company and with educators, when I meet with them, a lot of times I'll use Zoom, I'll use Hangouts, you know, I'm using all kinds of different tools and they all work perfectly well with iClicker Cloud and iClicker Classic. They work with all your existing lesson plans. So if you're someone who loves PowerPoint, you're going to be able to continue to use your PowerPoints. If you're someone who uses Keynote, or if you're somebody who maybe you're going to use a virtual whiteboard and continue to teach the way that you used to, you're going to be able to use iClicker without that, with all those sorts of things. And so because you are trying to make your classes more interactive, we're also trying to make it really easy for students to come online and to kind of reduce the burden of making any financial decisions in the next couple weeks. So we are offering free iClicker Reef use to all students in current courses through the end of this academic term. So if your students were using remotes in their class, they can opt into this. If you weren't using any kind of response system with your students, you can opt into using iClicker Reef with your students. And because we're going to be bringing so many more instructors into the iClicker happy family, we are also planning some additional training webinars for new users next week. So if you're here primarily wanting to learn how to use iClicker and you go, listen, I don't need any ideas, I just need the nuts and bolts, you are going to want to attend these trainings. They're going to have the same content. So if you decide to attend one of these, make sure you sign up for the one that you can attend in person. We're really encouraging people to attend these webinars in person if they can. If they can't, we'll have recordings of the webinars later. But these are really live events that will also use iClicker. And so these are next week, March 24th, 4 p.m. Eastern, and March 25th, 11 a.m. Eastern. And these will walk you through the nuts and bolts of getting started with iClicker. So you can just visit iClicker.com and click on the COVID banner at the top. for more information, and this is where you can also sign up for those training webinars. So I'm really hoping that this is something that you can bring into your class that your students are going to be excited about. It's going to bring in a sense of sensible play, and something that's a little bit makes coming to your live virtual lectures more enticing. Macmillan Learning also has other COVID-19 support. We realize that, maybe your students left campus and they don't have any of their course materials with them, or maybe you had a very hands-on sort of homework system and now you're looking for a homework solution that can work asynchronously. Launchpad, Slapping Plus, Flip It Physics, these are all really great solutions that I want you to look into if you're looking for something that students can participate in asynchronously in particular. So a lot of times we'll have instructors who say, hey, I teach an online course, but there's no live element to it. Can I use iClicker? And the answer is there's just better tools for that. So if you're in a situation where your leadership has said, hey, we can't have students attending any kind of live lecture, that cannot be a part of your class, everything must be asynchronous, these are going to be better tools for you. And you can go to macmillanlearning.com and click on the COVID-19 at the top of that for more information about these content tools that can make it so that students can opt in at any time. iClicker is really a live event software, and it's something that we want to have when we actually have a gathering of people together. And right now, maybe you're even anxious for me to ask a polling question of you, and those are coming soon. And I doubt many of you are thinking, man, I wish this was a recording. We were hungry for a live event. Your students are going to be hungry for live events too. So today we're going to go over some basics, but we're also going to be speaking to advanced users as well. So we're going to go over what iClicker use looks like in a virtual classroom before, during, and after class. It's pretty similar to what you were doing before if you were already using iClicker. There's just a few other considerations you want to make. We'll talk about instructor and student setup. This will include discussion of how to get your students who may have been using physical remotes to be using the iClicker Reef app. We'll go over some best practices for your virtual classroom, and I'm going to talk about some things you want to keep in mind as you're getting started with your virtual classroom, and I'll give you a few quick video and slide design tips. I really like connecting with my students using video, and I really liked offering times when my students could have live interactions with me. And I think that iClicker is a really nice way to offer that when you may have groups of students that are much larger than the ones that I ever taught. I always had about 30 students. You might be transitioning much larger groups of students online. And this is a really manageable way to make your classroom feel like old times. And part of that is you're going to be able to get your students to have a conversation with you while you're teaching in a controlled way. I'm also going to talk about putting away your remotes and bases. If you've got one of those, if you're worried about them, it's time to put them in a box because iClicker use online requires no hardware. We also have already been getting lots and lots of questions from our instructors. So we have a set of frequently asked questions from iClicker professors that we're going to go over before we get to our Q&A. So if you came here with questions, great. Please put them in the chat. Just like I would say to my students, put your questions down now because then you can focus on what's going on. I know a lot of times if you have a question in your head while you're trying to listen to something else, it's really hard to handle those two things at once. So we welcome your questions. We're going to get to a lot of them at the end. And hopefully this is going to get you feeling really good about bringing iClicker into your virtual classes. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is actually show everyone some of the fun that we can have with our students, even if we are all in separate homes. So this is a little game that I think is really fun to play with students. It's called Balance the Bars. And what you're going to do here is I have this poll and it's running. All I did was I clicked that little green button and the poll began to run. And I opened this, which is my results panel, so that I could see the responses come in real time. And what I'm challenging you all to do as a group is to try and get it so that there's the same number of responses in every single column. Okay, this is really fun because you can see how your individual actions affect everything. You can see how when students are voting, it's instant. You may even find if you are using iClicker on a campus where the Wi-Fi wasn't so robust, you might find that you actually have faster. This is super fun to watch. All right, we got 60 responses, so we could actually spread them all out. We could do this. Oh, we're to 66. This is really fun to do for your students the first time you use iClicker because they're really going to see the impact that they can have on their class. One of the things about the virtual classroom or what I'm doing right here is it can feel quiet, and you kind of will talk to yourself a little bit. So, this is the kind of thing where you can bring some play in, and you may have times where your students join in a hangout or something like that, so you can have your students respond verbally. But again, I've got 95 people here. If everybody had their mics on right now, this would be unbearable. Okay, so we could go on with this for a long time. That was almost 4 minutes. Okay, sometimes when you're the person who's running the poll, it can really feel like it's a long time. But for you, those of you who are participating in it, you were engrossed in the activity. You weren't looking at the clock. And anytime we can get our students so they're not looking at the clock, that's a good moment. So I'm going to give all of you some credit for valiantly trying. And you can see grading these, I just touch them to turn them into a correct answer. And I can do that with multiple answers if I want to. Okay. So those of you who are new to iClicker, I hope that was a really great introduction to it. With iClicker, you're going to be able to ask questions while you're teaching your students, and they respond from home in real time. So again, it's going to add that live element, but in a controlled way. It works with any presentation software and any video conferencing program that you may be using because it floats on top of all of your screens. And every time that you ask a polling question, pushing this green button takes a screenshot of whatever is displaying to your students at the moment. So you want to think about this little green button as almost like the camera shutter icon in your phone's camera app. So every time you do this, you can kind of imagine a camera shutter sound in your head, and it'll capture whatever is on your screen. So that's just something, if you're new to iClicker, you want to be aware of that. You want to have this toolbar on whatever screen you want your students to have. So iClicker works with your lesson plan. There's no preloading of questions or answers. If you used a different audience response system in the past, you may have had a system that required you to add something to your PowerPoints and you could always only use PowerPoint, or you had to upload your lesson plans and use their tool. You don't have to do any of that with iClicker. Everything goes along with your lesson plan. There's no preloading of questions or answers. If you don't like a question that you wrote or you don't have time, you can just skip it. If you need to ask another question, you can ask it on the fly. iClicker also takes attendance. And I think this is usually I'm not an attendance person at all. I was always like, if you come, you come. But now we're in these virtual spaces. I think it's more important than ever to acknowledge the students who are able to show up for the live events because they want to be seen. They're coming there to make a human connection. And I think just saying, yeah, check in. I want you to join. I want it to go back and forth, and I want you to see that you attended, you came. I just think that having something that's tangible about this event that can feel so virtual and far away and disconnected from what they expected, I think taking attendance right now is a really great idea if you're going to have live lecture events. It also will create study guides for your students automatically that they can use. So students feel really positive about their interactions with iClicker. And I feel like we design it from a perspective that it should always be positive, not punitive. And so, we really load up the iClicker Reef app up with a lot of things that are designed to help nudge our students to self-regulation and self-reflection and to really become independent learners. So I hope if you're playing in the iClicker Reef app today during the session, go and look after our session and see what's available to you if you were a student. So iClicker Reef also gives every student a voice and a way to participate. A lot of students, I've been watching a lot of the local news, and what I'm hearing is there are these students who go, I don't know how class is going to work virtually. I'm used to really interacting a lot with my classmates and my teacher, and I'm just really nervous. I'm really concerned. And I'm like, iClicker, get that girl some iClicker. And I really just want to urge all of you to give it a shot and to be gentle with yourselves as you learn to use it in a new way. Be gentle with your students. But really, I'm excited about this use of iClicker in this way because I think it is going to reassure a lot of our students that, hey, you're not suddenly going to just do a packet of homework dittos. You're not suddenly in this like disconnected school by mail thing that you didn't pick because you didn't think it was going to work for you. And so I really am glad that we have so many people here looking to bring iClicker into their virtual classrooms. As you're using iClicker, it's really easy to export grades from iClicker. They come out in a variety of CSV formats depending on your LMS. We do have grade sync options, and if you already have a grade sync set up before we started this term, we're supporting that, but right now we're putting kind of a hold on supporting LMS integrations just because we're bringing on a lot more users, and we want to be honest with you all that we don't know any more than you do what the future really holds right now. We're kind of wondering, how many users are we going to see? How many students are we going to have? And we're really excited, but we're also going, okay, let's figure out a way that we can support a lot of students. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is we're just going to put a hold on any new LMS integrations right now. All of the grades you can export from iClicker into Excel files, and they're really, really easy to work with. And a lot of our instructors actually prefer it. Okay, so I want to know about this group that I have right now, and I really want to know how familiar you all are with in-class polling. So I'm asking you a really quick multiple choice question right now, and I just want to know, how familiar are you with in-class polling? Are you A, completely new to it? Are you B, familiar with it, but maybe you haven't used it yet? Are you C, you've used it, but maybe not this term? D, you use it sometimes, or E, you use it all the time. So multiple choice questions are going to be your fastest ways to kind of take the pulse of what your students are doing. And this is really great if you're, trying to also kind of limit the kinds of responses that students can do. Wow, we've got a lot of people in our session. All right, this is great. So again, this is a huge crowd of people. I don't even know what's going on in the chat right now. I know that you might have a chat for your students. Be really transparent with them about when you'll be able to look at it. Okay, so let's see what this group is about. All right, it looks like we have a lot of seasoned users. We have people who've used it sometimes, and then we've got, about maybe 30% of the folks that are here are brand new to iClicker, or they're just getting started with in-class polling. You don't have to grade every single question that you have. And here, since I'm just trying to get information and taking the pulse of my class, I'm not going to grade any of these as correct or incorrect. I'm just going to leave it alone. So great. I'm glad that we have a big variety of the types of people here. And I'm really glad that so many of our core users are here, because you know how important it is that we support you right now. So I want to welcome those experienced iClicker users. If you are using iClicker Cloud or you're using iClicker Classic, we want to urge you to continue to use the software you are already using. Both iClicker Cloud and iClicker Classic instructor software works absolutely fine once you've been moved online. So whichever instructor software you have been using, it's time to put the iClicker remotes and bases in a box, put them somewhere. I have put my base away, and then maybe 3 months later I go to find it, and I get really annoyed with myself when I didn't put it somewhere that's actually sensible. So be smarter than me and put your iClicker remotes and bases away right now with all of your education materials that you're going to take back into the classroom when we are once again within each other's same space. So again, existing LMS connections will continue to transfer your grades. So if you already have an LMS set up, no need to do anything. We're only putting a temporary hold on brand new LMS integrations. And so by continuing to use the same software that you were using, Classic or Cloud, you're going to keep your students' grades and their experience consistent. And if you were to switch softwares right now, you would have to figure out new settings and grading and all that kind of stuff and things that you don't need to be bothered with. So keep on using whatever software you've been using. So if you are a Classic user, here's what you need to do to get students ready to participate with iClicker online, again, without iClicker remotes. You know, you might get a student who writes you a panicked email, I had left my dorm and my iClicker remote is under my bed, and you say you're going to be using iClicker and I don't know where the remote is. You want to communicate early and often to your students to say, hey, don't worry about whatever might be back in your dorm room. All you need to do is follow these instructions to sign up for iClicker Reef. And by the way, you don't need to buy anything. It's midterms. This is going to be free. So that can be really reassuring to your students. All right, so step one in iClicker Classic, you're going to want to open the iClicker Classic software and open your course settings. And then just enable the mobile settings tab and click save. That's all you need to do to enable students to be able to respond using iClicker Reef. For iClicker Cloud users, there's no need to enable anything as in Classic, but the one thing that you'll want to make sure that you do before you start using iClicker Online is if you are using our geolocation attendance feature, you are going to want to turn that off because obviously we don't know where our students definitely are right now, and it's much less important. So you're going to just want to log into iClicker.com, open the course that you've been using geolocation in, go into the course settings and disable location in the attendance tab. We have articles in our knowledge base that will walk you through all of these things. So if this is something you need to do and you're going, slow down, lady, I need this information. We have it in a much easier to refer to format than me just explaining it to you right now. And we'll talk about the knowledge base in a little while. So the next steps for your students are really important to consider as well. They are feeling kind of insecure. They are worried about all kinds of things, and they might assume that you're not going to be able to use iClicker virtually. Maybe you had a remotes only classroom and you said to your students, hey, I don't want, any laptops and I don't want any phones in my class. And they might think, oh my gosh, I bought this remote and it's going to be worthless. And, maybe it's adding to their worries. Let them know that iClicker will still be a part of their education. And by letting them know that iClicker will continue, they'll go, oh, well, if they're going to keep using iClicker, that means we're going to still keep meeting as a class. Oh, okay. Maybe this is going to be more like what I remember. iClicker is an engagement tool designed for live class events. So if you are an iClicker user and you're planning on pre-recording everything and you're thinking, oh, maybe I'll leave an iClicker poll open for 2 days. It doesn't work like that. It's really a live engagement tool for in-class events. So you might need to reimagine the way that you're using it, that you might need to reimagine the way you imagined using it. It just doesn't work well for asynchronous learning. It is really for actual events that happen in real time. You'll want to let students who were using remotes know how to properly sign up for iClicker Reef. And again, we have all kinds of resources on our support site that you can share with your students. I think something that maybe we're all feeling is, ooh, boy, we're all going to have to ramp up with a lot of technology very quickly that we may or may not be comfortable with. And that's true. But one of the things that we want to urge you is not to worry about being tech support for your students, but to really point your students towards resources we've already created. We assist thousands upon thousands of students and instructors every year, and the vast majority of them do it through self-service. Most people don't need to contact any of our live in-person support because we have really great guides designed to let people do setup and all these kinds of things independently. Again, we'll talk about that as we move forward. So I want to know, what are you most likely to use iClicker Cloud for now that you're moving into a virtual space? So this is an example of a target question. With this type of question, when you look at your device, you'll see that you have an image there and that you need to touch wherever you want to respond and then click the button send. So let me go ahead and read these responses. Reading the question and the answers out loud is a best practice when you're doing polling. This will accommodate students who maybe have some audio or visual processing and they need you to read these things out loud. So what would you most like to use iClicker for in your virtual classroom? Give your students a reason to attend virtual lectures. Break up virtual lecture into bite-sized sections. Create tight feedback loops with students in real time. Encourage participation from every student. Give and receive feedback in real time. You might be feeling kind of lonely lecturing to a video camera. Having that human connection in the back and forth could be really important for you as an educator as well, because let's not pretend that we aren't going to struggle a little bit not having, our students in front of us. Do you want to use it to set student expectations and focus their study sessions? Or do you want to use it to collect feedback on your lesson plans? That's probably my favorite use for iClicker. So again, just touch the answer that you feel is the closest to your primary motivation for using iClicker, and then click send. And I can see our responses are mounting. So this is a way that you can have a multiple choice question, but you can have much more than just A, B, C, D, E. I've had instructors do this with, say, a big batch of different images. And, I had an instructor who did this to create a virtual zoo with their animal biology students. And so they were having them use target questions to kind of stock the zoo up. It was really cool. All right, let's go ahead and stop this one. I'm going to click results. And if I click on it, I can make my image much bigger so that I can really look at the results. And sharing these results with your students too is really, really helpful because they can kind of see how everybody else is responding. And if I want there to be a correct answer, I can just draw a box around it. And you can see how all the answers within the box turn green and all the ones that are outside turn red. And then I click save. And if you're in a different place, it is going to say, you're wrong. But you know what? I don't like that. I'm gonna regrade this one because I don't want anybody to feel like their motivations for using iClicker are wrong. All of these are good, helpful things to do. And you can see how quickly I can grade these. Got 112 answers, and it took me about 2 seconds to grade it all. Okay. So before you use iClicker Cloud in your class, you will need to create an instructor account. You will need to create your iClicker Cloud course. This takes, 30 seconds. I kind of forgot to set up this course for you all, and somebody else on my team went in and created it really, really fast, and I think it was 30 seconds. You'll want to message your students. You'll want to tell them what to expect when they come into your classes, and then you'll want to add questions to your existing presentation. So again, you don't need to preload anything into iClicker software, but take your lecture deck that you are already using, and think of a few questions that you might want to ask, or maybe think of a time when you might want your students to simply ask questions of you while you explain a concept. So these are different kinds of ways that you can use it. I know that you all are creative, and especially under these kinds of circumstances, we get even more creative. So I'm really excited to see how you all start using these things in ways that we never even predicted. So the instructor and student experience during class is really similar to what you knew when you were in a brick-and-mortar institution. But the difference is, instead of going and opening up a door, you're going to turn on your video conferencing software. You won't go over to the lectern to turn on your computer. You'll already have it on, so you'll just open your presentation. And then the third thing you'll want to do is to start class with iClicker Cloud. And again, this is really helpful because your students are going to have that ritual of checking in for attendance. But for you as the instructor, sometimes when you're sitting and you're kind of waiting for people to show up, you're sort of sitting there and being like, I hope people come. And one of the things that you can do is you can click on the attendees list in the iClicker Cloud toolbar, and you can just see how many students are actually coming to class. So you might set a threshold for yourself where you go, okay, when I see that 20 students have checked in, that's when I'm going to start class. And that's even something that you could say to your students. So this is really helpful to me as the presenter to feel less lonely and less like I'm talking to myself. And then for your students, they'll log into iClicker Reef. They're going to join your class just like you have done with this session. That'll automatically mark them as present in iClicker attendance. And what's nice is they get this like little calendar, and every time they come to class, they get a green square. And if they miss a class, it's a red triangle. And you're going to have students who are really motivated to not get that red triangle. And, you know, anything that gets them to class is good. And once they've joined your class, they're ready to participate in iClicker polls. And we also have quizzing. Quizzing can act as a replacement for Scantron quiz types of things. I'm not really going to get into that now, but we do have a lot more information in our knowledge base. Okay, so here are the different kinds of questions that you can ask with iClicker Cloud. And here are the different ways that we have instructors using it. So I'm going to ask you another target question, and I want you to touch on the question type that you imagine you're going to use the most. So multiple choice questions, they're really, really fast. They allow students to make really simple selections to answer a question. You can use all of A through E, or you can just say, okay, answer A if it's yes, B if it's no, or true, false. You can use it for surveys and icebreakers. Again, that balance the bar activity takes no, effort. I didn't even have to put up a slide. I just opened the results. With short answers, students can put in a free form answer. So they can use any symbol. If you're, asking them to do scientific notation, they're going to have the full access of everything that's in their keyboard. Once your students have put in their answer, you can display their answers like a word cloud. You can have your students write up to 144 characters like a tweet. If you wanted to have students put, say, multiple choice answers in order, you could do that with short answer. You could do matching, ranking. With numeric, you are really limiting your students to only using numbers, scientific and scientific notation. So this is really good when you don't want your student to be able to say, I don't know. With target questions, students can tap on an image to answer different types of a question. So we see a lot of our science professors using this for anatomy questions, chemistry questions. It's a really cool way to interact with a graph or a chart. A lot of times I'll put up a picture of a map and I'll say, okay, where's everybody from? It's just a new way to interact. And then lastly, you have access to exit polls. With exit polls, you can get feedback from students at the end of class where it asks, rate your understanding of today's class and let me know if you have any additional feedback. So it's one more avenue of communication that you can encourage for your students. So I'll send you all an extra exit poll if you're part of our iClicker polling session today, and you can see what that's like. All right, let's go ahead and stop it and see what most people are using this for. All right, and what you're going to be using. I can see a lot. I love that I can see people who want to use every single different type in here. Multiple choice is the most popular, and I think you can see as we're in our time together today, the multiple choice questions definitely go the fastest. And then you can ask the most of them as you want. So here's the instructor experience when you're done with class. You've been able to turn the web camera off and you go, oh. This is what you're going to need to do afterwards. So in class, you need the iClicker Cloud desktop software. This desktop software is how I'm able to take this picture of my desktop all the time. But if I'm not asking polling questions, I can just go to iClicker.com where I can create my account and iClicker classes. I can customize settings, access grades, manage my students in the roster, and manage any attendance, polling, or quizzing data. So this, of course, is true for iClicker Cloud. If you're using Classic, you're still going to use your local data. So the student experience after class, they get a few cool things. They get that attendance record that I talked about that they can find really motivating. And one of my instructors that I was talking to made the point that a lot of times in class, students don't get anything graded for a really long time. And so they don't get any kind of positive feedback of, hey, you're doing well. By having an attendance record, the student can look at something and go, oh, I'm going to class and I can see my attendance record and I've got all these green squares. I must be doing well. And you know what? They are. They're doing everything they can to do well at that point. They're attending class. So that's something that he was surprised by, and he didn't. And he said he also had students who, they were really motivated to come to class, less to come to class, but more they didn't want to mess up their record. So there's a little gamification going on there that I think can be very motivating. Students also get their performance records so they can see how many points they've earned, and they can dive more deeply into it to see about their individual performance in sessions. And then they get access to their course history so that they can do things like put together those study tool packets that I talked about. With study tools, they're able to mark questions and then use them as flashcards, but they're also able to put them together into these really cool practice tests. Maybe that's something you'll play with in the app with our questions later, just so you can see what it's like for students. Okay, so now I'm going to transition into kind of just talking about some things that I learned being in the class. I'm not going to do this for very long, and I know that we don't have a ton of time left together. But I'm just feeling for everybody who, you're not going to be in your wonderful classroom anymore. You're going to be in your home office, which may feel more or less awesome to you. And one of the things that I want to remind everybody of when we talk about how our students are going to be learning online now is nothing about how we're learning online right now is typical. We have this whole other stressful thing that is happening. And so I want us to be really kind to our students and kind to ourselves and go, hey, everybody's under stress. And maybe, if things aren't running perfectly, maybe it has some more to do with stress than tools not being good or people not trying hard enough. So that's kind of like the attitude I like to bring to virtual teaching, because it's just, a different style. So when you come into your virtual classroom, you want to make sure that you open your video conferencing software, your presentation, and the iClicker Cloud desktop software. That's what's going to make it possible for you to ask your questions. I really do recommend turning on your video camera if you can help it to make your class feel real. Every single one of us throughout this presentation have had our cameras on. Have you been watching them much? I don't think so. But, it's nice to see at the beginning and it's nice to see at the end. And we're all going to be doing a lot more video calls these days. If you have your video camera on and you're feeling a little insecure about it, just throw some interesting stuff in the background. I went around my house and threw things up there, and get some nice light on yourself. Sometimes just turning on your overhead light makes a huge difference. And also, I just recommend that you bookend your learning sessions with a friendly face. And maybe, you every once in a while have like a Google Hangout with your students where you just go, hey, let's meet in the virtual quad and have a cup of coffee or something, because we are going to be hungry to see one another's faces. I don't know about you, but I've gotten a lot more comfortable with being on video in the last couple days, because I want to see my friends, I want to see my family, and our students want to see their instructors, and you want to see your students. So really try and get comfortable with the camera. Hide anything that you want to keep private on your desktop. I think that when we project in a classroom, we're pretty used to that, but we're also probably used to not using our personal computer. Make sure that you share your entire back desktop and not just one app or window. If you only share one app or window, then it's going to be limiting what iClicker is allowed to capture and send to your students. And I recommend printing lecture notes or having them open on a second screen or device, because anything that you're projecting, your students are going to be able to see. Anytime that you have this toolbar on top of your slides and you click this button, you're going to capture whatever you're displaying here. So that can make it really hard for you to have notes and follow up on things yourself. So I just recommend, I've got 2 screens going for myself, but you can do things just like print out your notes and have them in paper in front of you. And it just keeps things simple, and it also keeps you and your students super focused. So you want to think about optimizing your presentations for your students. You want to review the existing lecture slides you already have. So if you're new to iClicker, you're going to want to add polling questions to your lesson deck. You're going to want to think about what your slides might look like on a student's phone. Not all your students may have laptops. Maybe they're going to be doing a lot of things through their phones. You want to just go ahead and take a look. And then you want to think about colors, contrast, and font size. Accessibility is going to be way more important than ever before. This is a link to a really helpful accessibility guide that we can send out when we send out the recording here. But you really want to be keeping in mind, you might have students who are colorblind. You might have students who are dyslexic. You might have students who just don't like wearing their glasses. You really want to think about how accessible it is to the eyes. And iClicker, we're always thinking about accessibility with Reef. So if you have students with accessibility needs, urge them to use the iClicker Reef web app, as that's going to give them the most options for, say, using a reader or something like that. Again, it's a best practice to say the questions and answers aloud as you ask a question. And be sensitive to how long questions should be open. Maybe you have a student who you knew needed time and a half accommodations when you were in the classroom. Maybe you keep an eye on that student in your roster and see when they've responded before closing a poll. When you're asking polling questions, you want to anticipate polling surprises. So if it all goes sideways, have something in mind. You ask your students a question and they all answer it incorrectly and you thought it was going to be an easy one. You can just go into Microsoft Word and quickly ask a question on the fly. So here I'm just opening up Word. I'm opening a blank document. I'm going to make my font bigger. I'm going to ask you guys, did you have enough coffee today? And I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to say that A is yes and B is no. Not Bo, no. Okay, so you can see I didn't have anything prepared here. I'm in document number 1 in Word, and you can see that you've got your question in front of you, and now I'm able to go back to my my response. It's pretty easy. All right, let's do this one pretty fast. I'm going to close this one at 45. So again, think about how you feel right now. If you feel like this is lasting a long time, or if you feel like I'm only asking these a short time. Is it making this class more lively? Do you wish I wasn't doing it? All right, I'm not going to look at that one right now because we're starting to run short on time. You can always look at your results later at iClicker.com. So we really want to urge you all, especially if you are anticipating onboarding a lot of your students, to turn to iClicker.com support knowledge base. We obsessively work over these guides for your students. We actually have an entire team of faculty advocates who let us see the syllabi they've prepared or the way that they use iClicker in their class, and then we create a lot of support items based on that. So we're not people who are sitting in an office building who are deciding how people teach. We take all our cues from teachers. So as you think about using iClicker in these new and different ways, please turn to the knowledge base because you're going to be able to find these guides to remote instruction. You'll find syllabus language, and you're going to be able to support your students in a way that we've really worked hard on. We are almost done here, folks. So here are the frequently asked questions that we've already been getting from our instructors. After we do this, we can get to your Q&A. So do my students need to find their remotes? Should I plug in my base? No. Put your remotes and bases away. It doesn't require any hardware to use iClicker when used virtually. And do put it away neatly because we are going to be back in our classrooms. You will want to use it again, and you will be kicking yourself if you can't find it easily. I use iClicker Classic. Will my roster double up as students switch from remotes to iClicker Reef? Initially, you're going to see unknown Reef user in your gradebook as students start voting differently. But when you sync, it will link those Reef users to their proper student accounts, and you won't see the unknown Reef user anymore. I've been using iClicker Classic. Should I switch to cloud now? I know that we've covered this before, but again, we really want to emphasize a few things. Keep the software you were using before. This is going to minimize disruptions to your gradebook and to your students. And if you're interested in switching maybe for next term, we've got a lot of different support for that. And then lastly, sometimes my students can't seem to connect to campus Wi-Fi. Is this problem going to get worse now that all of my students are at home? Students generally are having an easier time connecting in their home internet than campus connections. Whew, okay, thank you guys so much. Now I think we're ready for Q&A, huh?
That's correct. And first of all, I just want to thank everyone for all of their great questions throughout this webinar. I've been busy trying to respond to as many as I can. So first question is, so to get students to join a class, is there an invite that you can send?
That's a really a good question. The invite that you're going to send to your students is going to be when you explain how to set up their iClicker Reef account. And when they set up their iClicker Reef account, you're going to tell them how to add your class to their iClicker Reef account. And then on class days, when they go and they log into iClicker, they get to join the class. So it's not so much something that you do really, really quickly, like a Google Hangout where you would just maybe send somebody a short link. They do need to set up an account. It takes about 30 seconds. It's something that you could definitely do together as a class in your first virtual meeting. That might be something interesting to do.
Is there a way to see a list of the students who have registered for your course through the iClicker Reef app before you hold your first poll?
If you go to iClicker.com, you log in as an instructor and you click on the name of that course, and then you go to people. Yes? Do we still, is that? Yes, click on people and you'll get a list not only of everybody who's registered for your class, but you can see who may have dropped your class. That's also where you can add a TA to your class and all kinds of other cool stuff that you can do with people.
Okay. How would you recommend looking at student responses without seeing them on your screen? Can you see them in a second screen?
Really good question. Okay, so I've got my second screen here. Let me show you what it looks like. I'm going to look at results from, let's say that I want to compare. I'm going to pull this over. If I just pull it over to my other screen, I can go and I can look at them. And I can just pull it over my other screen and preview it. Let's say that I only have one screen though. What I would recommend that you do is that you have the iClicker Cloud Instructor app on your phone, because I was actually I've been using that on and off throughout the presentation to just kind of see how many people have answered a question, and other things like that. So the iClicker Cloud Instructor app can be a nice alternative if you don't have two screens to be able to look at things privately.
Natalie, if you were showing dragging, I'm not sure the share was updating. Would you mind doing it again?
Yes.
And just maybe pop it out from the toolbar for us? Thank you.
There we go. You see me? All right, there we go. So again, let me go ahead and show you how sharing works. So I'm going to pull up some results, and I've got my results here. And if I don't want my students to see this, I'm just going to pull my whole toolbar over to my other screen. And then when I'm ready to ask my students again, I'm going to pull this over here again so that my students, come on, will only see this instead of seeing my my other screen. Does that make sense to everybody?
I have a suggestion as well. If you open up the results again, Natalie, there is a pop-out window if you wanted to perpetually keep it separate. On the top right, yep, right there, you could pop that out and move that over and drag that onto a separate screen as well.
We had several people ask about MS Teams or Microsoft Teams, I'm guessing that is. Just wanted to confirm, is iClicker something that's able to work with that? Is that a video conferencing software?
Microsoft Teams, I believe, is a meeting software, and yes, it is. iClicker is still agnostic. It should still work with it, but if you do have questions on particular software, please feel free to reach out to us.
Okay, perfect. We had several people also ask about sort of the differences between iClicker Cloud, which is what you're showing us in this webinar, Natalie, and iClicker Classic, which some folks are using already. So is there anything that you're showing in this webinar that people who are using iClicker Classic can't do?
So if you've been using iClicker Classic, you've obviously seen that I have different options here than you do. Most notably, with iClicker Cloud, you're able to ask those target questions that I was using. If you're using iClicker Classic, you're going to be limited to multiple choice, short answer, and numeric. You won't have target here. So that's one of the differences. We have a lot of guides in the knowledge base that compare Classic and Cloud, that move users that have been using Classic to using Cloud. If you've decided that you love teaching online and you love using iClicker virtually, iClicker Cloud is really built for that, and that's what I would encourage you maybe to use going forward. But honestly, I wouldn't switch anything right now. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep using what your students are comfortable with. And we definitely have support if you want to change your software moving forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks. Can you talk a little bit about how to ask a question with video, to discuss and analyze video, like how to start and stop using like the target question?
Yeah, so I've seen I've sat in a few classrooms and watched folks use it with YouTube have specific places that they plan on asking a question or pausing. So for instance, they'll start a YouTube video and a minute in they know that they want to engage with their students, maybe break up the mental stagnation that can occur by just sitting and watching the video. So 30 to 45 seconds and a minute in, they'll pause and they will take a screen capture of the YouTube kind of screen and pose the question there. Sometimes they don't use a PowerPoint for that particular aspect, but like iClicker has shown this whole time, you can really float it over anything, and so it'll actually capture a picture of where you were inside the YouTube video. And I've seen it used really effectively that way for breaking up videos and making it feel a little bit more engaging.
Thank you.
Great. I know we're pretty much at time, but maybe we have time for one more question. I know we've discussed this a little bit earlier, but in case people joined late, a lot of people have been asking what they need to do on their end if they're using iClicker Classic and they want to transition to an online class. So do they need to download anything else? Do they need to not use the iClicker base and iClicker remote anymore?
Let me go back to that slide just really quickly, just so I can show you all what you'll need to do. It's not much. Put the remotes and base away. You're not going to use your base. Here's what you're going to need to do, though. Open up the iClicker Classics software. Click on Settings, the course settings, and then you are going to go to Mobile, and you are going to enable the Mobile Settings tab, and click Save. Then you're going to want to send some instructions to your students on how to create their iClicker Reef accounts. So that, again, we have all kinds of documentation that we can help you with that. We have videos and step-by-steps, and we have syllabus language and email templates and all kinds of things to help you all to get your Classic users who might have been using remotes ready to use the app.
Great, thanks, Natalie. All right, so I just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for joining us today. We will be following up early next week with a recording of the webinar and also a copy of our presentation slides. We also are offering 2 introductory getting started webinars for iClicker Cloud instructors next Tuesday and Wednesday. So you can sign up at iClicker.com by clicking on the COVID-19 banner at the top. We had a lot of questions come in today and we weren't able to get to all of them. So I'll try to respond directly after this webinar if you didn't get your question answered. I think that's it. So thanks for joining us and please stay safe and healthy.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody. I really want to thank our educators. I want to thank everyone who came today. You all are representing a lot of our faith in the future. And you are going to provide so much important normalcy to your students, but you're also going to provide them for an avenue for healthy growth. You know, these are, and you're also going to give them positive challenges that they can focus on. So I'm really grateful to every single one of you. You're going to inspire your students in a whole new way, and they are going to remember you and your classes forever. So thank you for letting us be part of that memorable stuff. Thanks.